It's the battle of the franchise killers. Both movies meant to launch cinematic universes.
The shit's gonna hit the fan.
The Amazing Spider-Man 2 killed its franchise after 2 movies, while Green Lantern managed to beat that time and do it with just 1.
God damn, that's beautiful. You're welcome, Canada.
Green Lantern most successfully pulls off the idea of overcoming fear. Granted, it does this very clumsily and bluntly with the most obvious sentiment.
The ring didn't see that you were fearless. It saw that you had the ability to overcome fear. It saw that you're courageous.
But hey, at least it follows through, unlike anything else the movie goes into. Hal and Hector seem like they're supposed to be opposites, but it is never really explored. The extended edition shows that they have a past relationship, but the theatrical cut doesn't, and it just seems weird that they just know each other. Anyways, Hal is obviously the brash, carefree type, while Hector is the recluse and overly cautious type. Logically, Hal would have to realize that he needs to learn something from Hector to evolve, but Hector is too bizarre, and learning from him would seem like a step backwards for Hal. Instead, it seems as though he learns more from Carol, which is effective, but makes the villain role way more mute than it should be. From a story standpoint, Green Lantern is nothing significant. He's a jerk who gets superpowers and trains and walks away from being a hero, only to accept it when the time calls for it. Fairly typical hero's journey stuff. It's got serious issues that we will explore with the characters, but from a basic story standpoint, Green Lantern could be worse. Speaking of worse, there's The Amazing Spider-Man 2. As far as themes, this movie is about doing what you want at all times, whether it be breaking up with your significant other because you're an indecisive jerk or stalking them. Also, foreshadowing your death.
What makes life valuable is that it doesn't last forever. What makes it precious is that it ends.
And then dying to help your significant other defeat an electric monster when his meth head friend shows up.
You look like an avocado. Had sex with an older, more disgusting avocado.
Look at me!
Not gently, like it was hate fucking. There was something wrong with the relationship, and that was the only catharsis that they could find without violence.
It seems like there's maybe an obsession vibe they wanted, with Peter and Gwen obsessing over each other, Peter obsessing about his parents, Harry obsessing over Spider-Man's blood, Electro obsessing over Spider-Man, and eventually a desire for attention. But there's no consistency here. Peter and Gwen's obsession with each other leads to her death. Harry's obsession with Spider-Man's blood leads to him going meth head. So the moral with those is obsession is bad. However, Peter's obsession with his parents is rewarded with answers. Electro's obsession leads nowhere. It's the jerk at work that forced him to stay over, resulting in him becoming Electro.
Oh, Dylan, you stay here. What? There's a current flow problem in the genomics lab. Why don't you stay and take a look at that?
But it's my birthday. Everybody else is leaving. Why do I have to stay?
Because you're special.
Go play nice, all right?
And he becomes a villain not because Spider-Man rejects him, but because his obsession suddenly switches between being a Spider-Man fan to wanting the spotlight himself. Coincidence also seems to be important. Harry suffers a pain in his neck which causes him to drop the box his father gave him and unlock the computer display on the desk and gives him access to the Goblin suit specs. Peter throws his father's old calculator and reveals old tokens that happen to unlock an old abandoned secret science lab that still works and is not absolutely covered in spider webs or any form of animal life, and he discovers a message his father left him directly concerning how his blood can affect a Parker and no one else. So that's a thing apparently. And I can't talk about this story and not talk about the completely tacked on plane subplot that happens in Act 3. When the power goes out, we suddenly focus on these planes in the air. They can't communicate with ground control because apparently ground control doesn't have any backup power because that would be too useful a thing to have. It has nothing to do with any of the story and just exists to pad runtime. And when your movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, padding runtime is a terrible idea. And the moral of Amazing Spider-Man 2 is easy. Electricity fixes dental problems. Green Lantern at least has some ideas that it follows through on. Doesn't do this well, but it's there. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has no consistency in ideas. It just does whatever it wants, whenever it wants. This is an easy point for DC.
The one thing that a Green Lantern is supposed to be is fearless. Fearless is the job description. That isn't me.
Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker is something that never really came together. He's a good actor, but Peter in this movie comes off way too casual. He's supposed to be a science nerd. He does make the web shooters in this incarnation, but he styles his hair as well. You might be shocked to hear this, but your basic science nerd doesn't invest much money in hair gel. As Spider-Man, they have him making jokes with criminals rather than attempt to stop them.
Knock, knock. Mr. Criminal. Hey, my name is Spider-Man. You can call me Webhead, you can call me Amazing, just don't call me late for dinner, you get it?
The scene with the Rhino at the beginning seems like an extension of his scene with the car thief in The Amazing Spider-Man.
Just let me go. Is that a knife? Is that a real knife?
Yes, it's a real knife.
My weakness, it's small knives.
Just let me go.
Anything but knives! Oh, it's so simple.
Except the car thief scene had no one else in danger. Here, Rhino is ramming his truck into cars and injuring or killing people, while Spidey just jokes with him. The idea has always been that Peter Parker gains confidence when he becomes Spider-Man, but this Spider-Man acts exactly the same whether he's Spider-Man or Peter Parker. He acts like he doesn't care about anyone but himself. There is a burning building, but he can't decide if he'd rather save people in the building or stalk Gwen Stacy some more. Then we get to Harry's shtick in this movie. I'll dive more into Harry and supporting characters, but let's look at Peter here. He learns that his friend is sick and may die, and Spider-Man's blood may be able to save him. Does he go run experiments on his blood or perhaps research this on his own? We saw how good he was with cross-species genetics in the first movie. Nope. Instead, he just dresses as Spider-Man and tells Harry, tough shit.
I want to help you, Mr. Osborn. I really, really do. I can't give you my blood.
Why would someone do this?
He's an asshole.
Ryan Reynolds plays Hal Jordan, a man we are introduced to by showing him leaving a girl in his bed, welcoming her to all the water in his tap.
Sorry, I gotta run. Make yourself at home, okay? There's, water in the tap.
Go play nice, all right?
He then proceeds to drive like a maniac to work while wrapping a present for his nephew. Now, I understand this is just to show him being reckless, but why does he wrap it on the way to work? Why not have him wrap it between work and going to give it to his nephew? I'm of course putting more thought into this than I should. The nephew literally means nothing in this movie. He's just there to imply to the audience that Hal cares about him. Surely there must be an easier way to do this. Do we have to invent a new character just for this? Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. At work, he's supposed to show off how well these drone planes do shooting him down. He's supposed to lose, but instead chooses to sacrifice his wingman and his plane in the demonstration to show the limits of the drones. Because of this, there are layoffs in the news where they report on how Hal did in the demonstration for reasons that baffle me. Does the news usually report of business demonstrations? It gets really baffling later when it's revealed that the deal went through, thereby making the layoffs unnecessary.
Somebody very special I'd like to thank for helping us to nail this contract.
But they happened anyways, I guess. I don't think this movie knows what it's talking about. Anyways, Hal gets a lantern ring from a dying Green Lantern, decides to wear it, and when he's assaulted by some of the workers who got laid off, he decides to use it to at least seriously injure a few of them and kill one of them. Yes, that guy who went through a brick wall has to be dead.
That's actually murder. It's one of the worst crimes of all, so also illegal.
What makes this worse is that he does this after the guys started walking away. If he did this mid-assault, it would be forgivable. But these guys were done and walking away, and Hal murders one of them. Our hero, everyone. I'm going on, but I hope I established something very important about Hal.
He's an asshole.
Now, I've spent a lot of time harping on how awful Hal is, but that's also the point of this. The movie is supposed to have an arc for Hal, because he starts as a complete asshole, but then at the end isn't one or is less of one. This is the problem. There's no real clear change for Hal, or motivation for Hal to change. He just decides to use his ring to save people, and that's it. Maybe his arrogance could get someone he cared about injured or kill or to help facilitate his change, but we get nothing. So his arc is that he's an asshole, but then at the end, he's not one for reasons undisclosed. So both these characters are assholes. But there's a huge difference too. Hal is supposed to be an asshole and is supposed to undergo character growth. It's not done well, but it's something. Spider-Man is an asshole here, and the movie acts like he's doing nothing wrong. The winner is clear. Point for DC.
He said that the ring chose me. He said it was a great honor, responsibility. Maybe on their planet, responsibility just means asshole. Let's hope so.
Green Lantern has Blake Lively as Carol Ferris, Mark Strong as Sinestro, Tim Robbins as Hammond, J.O. Sanders as Carl Ferris, Taika Waititi as Tom Kalmaku.
This doesn't make any sense.
Nah, nothing makes sense here, man. The only thing that does make sense is that nothing makes sense.
Patrick Swayze as Dalton, and Angela Bassett as Amanda Waller. With the exception of Carol and Sinestro, no one has any real impact in this movie, and Sinestro's role is to set up the next movie. He's supposed to be Hal's teacher, but then Hal quits and they don't really talk, and then for some reason he and his other trainers pop up to help Hal before he falls into the sun. The trainer-student relationship where they become friends and the trainer becomes evil was done infinitely better in Doctor Strange between Strange and Mordo. Sinestro and Hal have no real significant relationship. So when we get the mid-credit scene in this movie where Sinestro goes evil, I genuinely don't care. It's just something that happens. The movie seems to want to explore the relationship between fathers and their children. Carol has her father, Hector has his father, and Hal is dealing with his father's death, and none of these relationships go anywhere in this movie. It's like the movie thought they could have a theme by setting one up, but not doing anything with it. A much better movie that actually does spend a lot of time examining a child's relationship with their father is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Carol is a character in that she does some stuff and is Hal's love interest. That's about it. She comes off as super aggressive against Hal in her very first scene, which makes her unlikable.
I think you're late.
Yes, but that's only because I slept in.
I used to sleep in. Then I turned 11. Let me give you a little heads up. I've gone up against these sabers all week, and they have smoked me every time. There isn't anything you can do that they can't do better, faster, and without disappointing women everywhere.
Even if Hal's an asshole, what makes going after him like this acceptable? This movie even got Amanda Waller in there and does nothing with her, so it's not even worth discussing. Angela Bassett gets wasted in her comic book movies. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, Sally Field as Aunt May, Paul Giamatti as the Rhino, Colin Feore as Donald Mencken, Felicity Jones as... crap, what's her name again?
What's your name?
Felicia.
Bye, Felicia.
Embeth Davids as Mary Parker, Campbell Scott as Richard Parker, BJ Novak as Alistair Smythe, Chris Cooper as Man Who Needs a Nail File, Patrick Swayze as Dalton, Martin Kosakis as some weird scientist guy, and Dennis Leary as Ghost Dad.
I'm an asshole, yo, 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 yo. I'm an asshole, yo, yo.
I will say this, I think the actors in the supporting cast of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 are better than the supporting cast of Green Lantern for the most part. Blake Lively is fine, but she's no Emma Stone. Now that that's out of the way, I cannot even begin to tell you the point of most of these people. Gwen Stacy is there to foreshadow her own death, then force herself into a situation where she dies. As one of the oldest high schoolers ever, she managed to memorize the specs of the exact power station they were going to. That's random and helpful.
I've seen the grid specs and I know how to reset the entire system.
Ben.
I'm coming with you. You know that you need me.
You're coming with me. Shut the thing. Sorry, I love you. Don't hate me.
Aunt May is there to yell about laundry, give a brief exposition dump, then work at a hospital where they lose power and gain it apparently before anything actually happens, so it's all good. Paul Giamatti and Martin Kosakis are in a completely different movie.
Say hello to Alexei Sixevich!
I'm here to study you, to understand what you are, why you are, and I will get results.
They are crazy over the top, and I want to say they would fit better in the Raimi series, except even there, the crazy characters have some depth to them.
Who's the photographer who takes the pictures of Spider-Man?
I don't know who he is. His stuff comes in the mail. You're lying! I swear.
Here, we just have crazy characters in a roughly normal universe for no reason. All the other characters range from useless to unmemorable. We spend way too much time learning about Peter's parents, which is one of those things that never works out when they explore it in the comic book, and this movie leans so heavily into it and is still completely disinteresting. And if we count the city as a supporting character, why are they interested in watching violence behind police lines? People literally line up to watch it like it's a goddamn concert. At the end, Rhino is literally shooting his gun around, and this woman has her son with her at the front of the line. What is wrong with this city? As I said before, I like most supporting actors in Amazing Spider-Man 2 more than Green Lantern. But where Green Lantern doesn't seem to know what to do with its supporting cast, Amazing Spider-Man 2 just misuses them. This is another easy point for DC.
You give us hope. A toast to our future.
This time we have sci-fi comic book action versus comic book action, and the comic book cancels out, so you get sci-fi action versus plain old regular action. And judging just on the action, it's gotta go to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I actually saw this movie in 3D when it came out, and it probably has some of the best 3D scenes I've ever seen. Some of the stuff just pandered, but other scenes, like where Spider-Man caught all the vials, looked awesome. Sadly, 3D doesn't age well, and when watched on 2D, it really sticks out as unnecessary. That being said, the action in Green Lantern is really unnoteworthy. All the constructs the Lanterns make with their rings are really uncreative. Sure, Hal Jordan could just make stuff from Earth, but why do all the aliens pretty much do the same thing? Sinestro even comes damn close to making Captain America's shield, and to reinforce that it's Captain America's shield, he even throws it. Action-wise, Spider-Man is certainly nothing great, but to his credit, Marc Webb does have enough Spider-Man flipping action to make it look cool enough. But let's look at the sci-fi and Green Lantern genre. Overall, they explain what the Lanterns are well enough. However, the rules get inconsistent. The most baffling bit is when Hal seems to control the ring when he gives it to Hector.
I lied. I lied too. You see, the way it works is, you have to be chosen.
But once Parallax arrives, he needs to have the ring to control it. Pick one movie, either he controls the rings all the time or only when it's on. Plus, Hal quits the Lanterns, yet still keeps his ring and powers with no repercussions, and is even allowed to just barge in on a meeting with the Council after he quits the Corps. Did he quit? Is he not truly allowed to quit? How does this work? Do any of these things have any answers given in the movie? Why would they? The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has more memorable action, and in this category that proves to be enough. Point for Marvel. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has a score by Hans Zimmer and the Magnificent Six with Pharrell. Hans Zimmer is an absolutely amazing film composer, but what happened here? The Magnificent Six includes Junkie XL, who is another damn good composer. However, we did see they didn't work as strong together as they do separately in Batman v Superman, and here, the music is brought to the most basic level. The score isn't bad per se, just generic. This is the main Spider-Man score here. Compare this to Elfman's Spider-Man score. There is no comparison. I typically like Zimmer more than Elfman, but Elfman's theme is unique and memorable. Zimmer perhaps developed the least noteworthy Spider-Man score ever here. Green Lantern was composed by James Newton Howard, and it's totally solid. It has its own sonic personality, and while it may not be the best score ever, it works well. If it was a better movie, the score would be far more memorable. Green Lantern does some fine sound design for the ring constructs.
Fear is what stops you and makes you weak.
While Amazing Spider-Man 2 does fine sound design for Electro and the Goblin suit. It's all fine, but Green Lantern has a much better score and doesn't have Phil Phillips.
Want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
And thus DC gets the point. Both these movies have two villains, and neither of the villains really count as a main villain. Green Lantern has Clancy Brown as Parallax and Peter Sarsgaard as Hector Hammond. Parallax is definitely the villain that they make the bigger deal out of, but he's hardly any sort of character, just a big fluffy cloud that kills people. Hector Hammond, on the other hand, is presented like an opposite to Hal. Hal is reckless to the point of being extremely dangerous. Hector Hammond is reserved to the point of uselessness. We see he pretty much has everything provided to him through the influence of his father. However, he becomes far more aggressive when he gets infected by Parallax and gets superpowers from it. Hector is far more present than Parallax, but he's also far less threatening, which is actually saying a lot since Parallax is a goddamn cloud in this movie. He's an antisocial guy who gets superpowers and uses them to be as petty as possible. He kills his father and kidnaps Carol to force him to give up the lantern ring. That's the extent of his villainy. Oh wait, he also assaults a student. Honestly, overall, he might actually do less evil than Hal does when he attacks those laid-off workers. In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, we have Jamie Foxx as Electro and Dane DeHaan as Harry Osborn. Electro is obsessed with Spider-Man, then obsessed with Spotlight. Harry learns he has the Osborn disease from his father and suddenly gets sick from it crazy fast. He goes from not knowing it exists to borderline dead super fast when his father lived with the virus for decades. I don't even understand why this movie thought killing Norman Osborn and having Harry be the main Green Goblin was a good idea. In comic books, Norman Osborn is one of Spider-Man's greatest foes. He hurt Spider-Man more personally than any other villain in his canon. Harry was more a tragic villain living in his father's shadow who redeemed himself when he learned to walk away from his father and do what he thinks is right. It's controversial, but I think Spider-Man 3 does this better than the comic book, but both do a solid job of showing Harry's redemption. But I digress. This movie gives us Harry, and that's who we have to deal with. It's weird how in the final battle in both these movies, the villains take turns attacking the hero. Harry waits for Electro to be dead before he attacks, and Parallax kills Hector before taking on Hal. That was nice of him. This category is rough because all these villains are so bad. I hate all four, but at least Hector is clearly a parallel for Hal, while Parallax is a parallel for the Lanterns, and that is made clear in this movie. Harry and Electro are just weird and fail to engage the audience with their bizarre behavior. Point for DC.
You will suffer the same fate. Once I have devoured your world, I will have all the strength I need to defeat the core.
Green Lantern might be the most CGI-dependent movie ever. And to its credit, it does actually look, for the most part, really good. The issue here is when it doesn't. Too often you'll have Ryan Reynolds or Mark Strong's real head on a pile of really good CGI, and it just looks like a copy-paste job of their heads on animated bodies, because that's exactly what it is. If they could have figured out a way to have practical suits for them to wear and maybe just CGI elements of the suit, it would have looked so much better. Everyone says Green Lantern has bad CGI, but it is actually a case of do something right, no one cares, do something wrong, and the whole world watches. If Green Lantern wants to be so dependent on CGI, fine, but then you have to make sure you get that shit 100% right. You can't go all in and act like second place will cut it. You go all in, you either lose it all or win big. Honestly, Green Lantern looks good most of the time, but when it looks bad, it destroys any goodwill the good stuff built up, and sometimes it just looks terrible. Amazing Spider-Man 2 has fairly seamless CGI. However, the makeup on Green Goblin is beyond terrible. Sure, maybe not a Power Ranger again, but instead just going with some dumb Osborn family virus that gives you claws and turns your skin green might have been the soupedest alternative you could have gone for. Electro's ability to turn into electricity may look cool, but if he can do that, isn't he just indestructible then? They try to say he can be defeated if they overload him with electricity like a battery.
How do we stop him?
Okay, so he's electric, he's like a battery, so what happens if you overcharge a battery?
It explodes.
Except a battery isn't just raw electricity like Electro is. A battery is an actual physical device. Electro is capable of just turning into raw electricity. Why attack him like he's a battery when he doesn't behave like a battery? Of course, I have to say the lightning bolt on his outfit and the meter on his head are bizarre choices as well. Apparently they're made of electricity too. Essentially, this movie lets go of all logic, just have Electro look cool. This is where the movie falls apart in visuals. There's a disconnect between the story they're trying to tell and what they are visually showing us. Electro is pure electricity, and Harry Osborn is a meth head is what they are showing us. So shockingly, despite the excessive CGI, Green Lantern is at least showing us stuff that is consistent with the story they want to tell. Point for DC.
Rash, volatile, opinionated. It seems Abensour found another just like himself.
DC almost had a clean sweep here with Green Lantern of all things. Martin Campbell directed two of the very best Bond movies ever, with GoldenEye and Casino Royale. You would assume a comic book movie would be cake for him after that, but somehow we got Green Lantern instead, a movie that had ideas but no idea on how to properly execute them, which is still way better than The Amazing Spider-Man 2, a movie with no ideas other than trying to look cool and do things different from the Raimi movies. If you told me that 3 screenwriters each wrote an Amazing Spider-Man 2 script and they all ran into each other in the hallway and their scripts got mixed together and they all just went with that, I would believe you. Hell, it would explain so much.
No! You got your trout in my peanut butter! Your peanut butter got on my trout! Not bad!
Hey, if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. And if you really love this video, consider visiting my Patreon page.